Hey, what's up, y'all? You know what I'm saying? Back with another video. Enjoying a wonderful day out here. It's good. You know what I'm saying? Feeling kind of brolic. Hey, I want to thank y'all, you know what I'm saying, for supporting the channel and supporting the station and whatnot. Getting a lot of love, getting a lot of calls from everywhere. And I do it for the people. I do it for y'all. You know what I'm saying? So much love to y'all. You know what I'm saying? Out here enjoying this wonderful day. You know what I'm saying? Keep it pushing all the time. Spend this history and this knowledge for our people. You know what I'm saying? Today's topic gonna be about black slave rebellions. You know, and we gonna come out of the book of the historian Herbert Aptheker, the foremost authority on the topic. You know, and he gave about 250 slave revolts that happened. You know what I'm saying? Prior in the South, that occurred in North and South prior to the Civil War. You know what I'm saying? But there's many more than just that. You know what I'm saying? Out of the 250, we're not gonna go through all 250, of course. I'm gonna just do 13 and brush through the 13, and just brush through the 13 of them. You know what I'm saying? That, you know, that's not really talked about in school. Not talked about. It's barely even talked about in the history books. You know, but we was gonna go through 13 of them. The first one is the New York Revolt of 1712. On April 12th, about 25 slaves set fire to a house, killed 9 whites and wounded 7 others. Within 24 hours, 6 rebels committed suicide and 21 slaves were executed. Some was burned and others were hanged. One was broken on a wing and the other was kept hung alive on chains. The revolt caused the Massachusetts and Pennsylvania to pass tariff regulations to cut down on importation of slaves. A lot of people think that slavery just happened in the South, and that's not true. You know what I'm saying? This is a revolt, like I said before, that happened in New York City, and where we tried to tear the city down. The Stono Rebellion, 1739. This rebellion started September 9th on a Stono plantation, 25 miles southwest of Charleston, South Carolina. A man named Cato led the rebels, and their aim was to reach the Spanish-held Florida, the governor of which had promised liberty to all fugitive English slaves. The slaves destroyed everything in their path, burning stores, and took up arms and recruited slaves. The group killed about 30 whites, and about 40 blacks were killed, and 40 were captured and executed. Nearly a dozen slaves escaped or remained unaccounted for. The Stono Rebellion resulted in a 10-year moratorium on the slave imports through Charleston and enacted further slave codes, which banned the earning of money and education for slaves. The New York Insurrection of 1714, right? That's the second one in New York City, right? Because, like I said, slavery was in the North. In the beginning of March, there was a series of suspicious fires, and many were convinced that black slaves and white accomplices set some of these. Among 150 slaves and 25 whites were arrested. 4 whites and 13 slaves were burned alive. 18 blacks were hanged, 2 of them in chains. 7 who were indicted were not captured, and about 70 were banished. Much of the testimony came from known liars and the slaves who were tortured and promised freedom in exchange for their cooperation. As a result, historians argue whether the New York Slave Rebellion of 1714 was a complete framing result of panic or a real desirable conspiracy. The Saint-Domingue Rebellion of 1791, which is the most famous, which is called the Haitian Revolution, and it's the most famous out of all of these. Well, one of the most famously known, we should say. Toussaint Overture led slave revolt against French colonizers. Overture was a self-educated former slave. The rebellion is also considered the most successful slave revolt in the Western Hemisphere. The revolt established Haiti as a free republic. Thousands died as a result of the conflict, and the news of the rebellion influenced similar revolts in the eastern United States. So this slave revolt influenced many slave revolts in the United States during that time. Like I said, we're not going in depth. We just brushing it over, all these 13 slave revolts out of the 250 that Herbert Aptheker talked about. Gabriel Prosper Rebellion, 1800. Gabriel was a name which he was known was a slave of Thomas Postor. Gabriel had become a skilled blacksmith who organized a group of 1,000 slaves with the intent of seizing Richmond and ending slavery in Virginia. On August 30th, flood rain postponed the rebellion, and the next day the slaves were arrested. 34 blacks was executed, including Gabriel. At least 4 condemned slaves escaped prison, and at least 1 committed suicide. Gabriel eluded capture till September 25th, when he was captured in Norfolk. His trial was postponed for the hopes he would talk, but as the other blacks who was captured, he remained silent. As a result of the attempted uprising, many owners restricted the travel rights of their slaves. The attempted uprising led to conspiracy of other rebellions and forced slave owners choose between a program of gradual emancipation or reducing the slave population to an illiterate, unskilled condition. The Louisiana Territory Slave Rebellion led by Charles Dessalines, 1811. A slave named Charles Dessalines rose on January 8th, starting at a appointed plantation of the Major Andre. They killed Andre's son and wounded the Major, and then took possession of the guns and marched from plantation to plantation. Slaves joined in the march to help kill at least one of the whites, and destroy several plantations. Forces then dispatched from New Orleans, which took about 35 miles, where the rebellion began. Of the 400 rebels, 66 were killed or executed on the spot. 16 was captured and sent to New Orleans, and 17 reported missing, presumed dead in the woods. All those tried in New Orleans were executed, and their heads were strung as an interval from the cities from Andy Plantation. The Boxley Rebellion, 1815. In March, George Boxley, a white storekeeper, decided to free slaves and form a conspiracy in Virginia, Spotsylvania, Louisiana, and Orange counties. A slave woman betrayed the plot in early 1816. About 30 slaves were arrested. While Boxley fled, 6 slaves escaped, and 6 others were hanged. The Fort Blanc Rebellion, 1816. In Apalachicola Bay, Florida, about 300 slaves and 23 Native Americans held Fort Blanc for several days before being attacked by U.S. troops. Denmark Vesey's Uprising, 1822. Vesey was a slave who purchased his freedom in 1800 and then started a successful carpentry business. His rebellion would have been the largest in U.S. history, which occurred on the second Sunday in July. About 9,000 slaves and freed blacks throughout Charleston became aware of the plot, which leaked by black spies. 130 blacks were arrested in Charleston, 47 were condemned, 12 were pardoned and transported, 35 were hanged, 20 were banished, and 26 were acquitted, with 11 told to leave the state. 38 blacks were discharged, and 4 white men were fined and imprisoned for verbally encouraged blacks. The planned revolt comprised of 5 points and a 6th force on horseback. So this is a very well organized revolt of 9,000 slaves. And they have 5 points and a 6th force on horseback. So they was coming to get it. Another famous one, the Nat Turner Rebellion of 1831. Turner was a religious slave who turned away from his master when he was 21, but later returned. He had been known among the fellow slaves as a prophet, and found religious signs instructing him to rebel against slavery. Following an eclipse, Turner told 4 slaves of an attempted uprising to be carried out on July 4th. However, Turner became ill and waited for a second sign, which occurred on August 13th, when the sun appeared as a greenish blue. A meeting was held for Sunday, August 21st, and the group meeting of 6 slaves killed Turner's master, Joseph Travis, and his family. Within 24 hours, the numbers of blacks and slaves rose to over 70. They killed nearly all the whites they encountered. About 60 whites were killed, but the rebels were spared non-holding slave families. Troops were called in and suppressed the rebellion within 48 hours. 13 slaves and 3 free blacks were immediately hanged. Turner was not captured until October 30th and was hanged on November 11th. Among 55 blacks suspected of being involved in the uprising were killed. The following rebellion, hundreds of blacks were beaten, tortured, and murdered by white mobs. As a consequence of the rebellion, Virginia state legislature considered abolishing slavery and created an official policy which forbade questioning the slave system and feared that such discussion would occur in similar revolts. The Amistad Seizure, 1839. A man known as Joseph Kennedy led a revolt of West African kidnaps into slavery. The captives were of the many people of Sierra Leone. They used a nail to pick the iron locks from their fellow captives. The captives opened boxes of sugarcane knives to carry out the insurrection. Quetelet and his 40 rebels took control of the slave ship, Lala Amistad, and killed the ship's captain. The ship ended up near Long Island, where the Navy took the blacks to New Haven, Connecticut to await trial. Both the United States and Spain banned Atlantic slave trade, so it was unclear if the passengers were free or property. The case was tried all the way to the Supreme Court, and eventually all the Africans were freed. This is another very, very important one in history, another slave revolt that's not talked about, which still has effects on black people today, the Creole Revolt of 1841. 19 slaves seized a ship named Creole, which is transporting 130 slaves from Virginia to Louisiana, New Orleans. The slaves killed the captain and demanded the ship be taken to Nassau, Bahamas, which was a British colony. Although the British held 19 rebel slaves on charge of murder, the case created diplomatic tensions between Great Britain and the United States. This is a very important, the Creole Revolt is a very, 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 very important slave revolt that's not talked about during the history books. You got to look up Joshua Reed Giddens, the representative from Ohio who was censored because of him standing up for the slaves. So they kicked him out of Congress, the House of Representatives, for standing up for the slaves, because many people don't know during this time, and it's not talked about during history, or rarely talked about during the books, they had a gag order in Congress about slavery. So this is one of the things that's not discussed. It's very important. That slave revolt is very, very important and need to be talked about. Also in that slave revolt, just in the FYI, because I read about it, it talks about how while black people have civil rights on land, but when they out at sea, they're reverted to natural rights. Something that need to be discussed. Captain John Brown raid on Harpers Ferry, 1859. Prior to his raid on Harpers Ferry, abolitionist John Brown advanced the destruction of Lawrence, Kansas by slave advocates by killing 5 pro-slavery men. On October 16, 1859, Brown led 12 other white men and 5 black men and 4 escaped slaves, a free black man, in an attempt to attack a federal arsenal in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, now West Virginia. On October 18th, the U.S. Marines captured the rebels. The 7 survivors of the battle was tried, convicted, and hanged. Brown, on December 2nd, in addition, was called for trial and feared that Brown supporters might try to rescue him. 1 Marine died along with 4 other whites and the free black Southern slave owners, fearful that other abolitionists would try to emulate Brown and attempt to lead rebellion, organized militias. Some people condemned Brown while others viewed him as a martyr. Examining the slave insurrection is essential for understanding American slavery as part of American history. Slave rebellions are often referred twice in the U.S. Constitution. The study of slave rebellion is also important because it contradicts the stereotypes of the bourbon historians who made slavery appear idiotic and portray the slaves as being content and obedient and racially inferior. In order to preserve the sanctity of the institution, these historians distorted the truth by saying the attempts of resistance, namely rebellion, were rare, where in fact they were not. It was not rare. We cut and acted a fool. That's why I'm doing this in Black August, because a lot of stuff used to pop off around this time. Societies and children, in turn, accepted the fallacies as they were reported, and more commonly admitted in the history textbooks. Revolt was merely one method in which the slaves hoped to attain their liberty. If problems reporting slave rebellions in the textbook occur and continue, surely other minority representations of problems exist as well. Resistance to bondage is relatively to every student to become the heart of rebellion is an enduring question. What price are you willing to pay for freedom? You know what I'm saying? Let's read that one more time. Resistance to bondage is relatively to every student because at the heart of the rebellion is the enduring question, what price are you willing to pay for freedom? For the stories of resistance are not told, the image of the slaves accepting inferior and subordinate positions will continue to plague future generations. And that's why, another reason why we got to support black media. All black media. I ain't talking about the Root and other stuff like that that's ran, they show black faces, then they have, the owners is Jewish gay guys. You know what I'm saying? Support black media, support stuff like this that's keeping the real history and letting our people know. We fought up and down and stuff many, many times in many, many places. But because we don't write the history books and we don't control the pen, many people don't know about it. And that was just 13 slave revolts out of 250 by Herbert Aptheker, a book written in the 1940s. But as we dig more and more through history, there's about 300, it's over 300 now, slave revolts that popped off in the United States during this time. So this is another reason why we support black history. We support black intellectuals, we support black, free independent black thought. You know what I'm saying? So the babies can know stuff like this. I'm a grown man. I didn't know nothing about this until like a couple years back. We've not talked about during Black History Month, of course. You know what I'm saying? During Black History Month, another controlled thing is talking about subjugated black people. We got to have another video about that. You know what I'm saying? But yes, our people fought. You know what I'm saying? Our people fought like, you know what I'm saying, like the warriors we are, the kings and queens and gods and goddesses we are. We fought for our position to get out of slavery. That makes you understand, what price are you willing to pay for freedom? You know, this is Akowski on Fun Day. You know, subscribe to the channel. Much love. We're going to have much videos because, you know, we ain't going to stop this. We got to keep it going for the next generation, Like Patrice Lumumba said, you know what I'm saying, Washington, Brussels, and Paris control the pen, but now we control the pen to our history and our future. Hey, much love. Hey, and subscribe to the channel. Peace.